So welcome to the third in a series of 3 video recordings focusing on LoRaWAN technology. And today I've got Byron BeMiller joining me. We're going to talk about smart buildings. Welcome, Byron.
Thanks, Will. Glad to be here.
Hey, can you introduce yourself and tell us what you do in your day job as well?
Sure. So I'm here, I think, on behalf of the LoRa Alliance as head of the Smart Buildings Work Group. But I am with Semtech, who is a provider of LoRa technology to the market in the form of either IP or discrete semiconductor chips. Been working on LoRa applications and with Semtech since we released it to the market, whatever it's been, 7-8 years ago. And I am part of one of the IoT connectivity groups within Semtech, doing business development.
Great. Well, let's jump into it. So there are kind of 3 areas that I'd love to focus on. And it's no surprise or, to the industry that, LoRaWAN is really focused on sustainability. And I want to talk about air quality. And I don't want to bemoan the pandemic because certainly there are use cases beyond, COVID-19 and that sort of thing. So let's talk about air quality and employee health and safety and some use cases around that.
Sure. So, that's a very interesting one. We have definitely seen, and by we, I'm kind of using that in the context of the broadest LoRaWAN ecosystem. We have definitely seen significant increase in interest in monitoring indoor air quality. And this can be in conjunction with the HVAC provider, or many companies are just doing it on their own and taking that information and using it discreetly. So I think it started originally with heightened interest around, air quality for safety reasons, around COVID, all those kind of things, making sure you're, turning over air in a room to get people back in the office. But in doing so, I believe people have come to understand the importance of air quality just in productivity for their employees. So there's a heightened interest now on monitoring CO2 and, of course, humidity and temperature levels, and the effect on maintaining those in an optimal way on productivity for employees. So you see people now putting air quality monitors in individual rooms and taking that information and using that to determine if they need to pump more air into the room, open windows, whatever the case may be. A great example of that one is a company called, I'm just kind of thinking of here, it's a company called MileSite. And they worked with sort of the education ministry in Quebec. And I think it was 40,000 plus classrooms. They deployed sensors in and are now monitoring for indoor air quality, things like CO2 level, temperature, humidity, that kind of stuff. And the education ministry is doing it to maintain a good learning environment, and of course also with an eye towards trying to minimize the potential exposure to any kind of health risks that they can control through the air quality. So I think that one's a great example of a use case where, and if I remember the press release right, they specifically mentioned they were able to do this without any Wi-Fi connectivity, without cellular, anything like that. They were to put this up in just a matter of no time with LoRaWAN connectivity.
Yeah, and when you start adding sensors to Wi-Fi networks, it tends to oversubscribe those networks as well. But let's move to the second topic that I really want to kind of dive into with you. And, the pandemic, we had to work from home. It kind of changed the way that we all sort of work in general. And I think one of the challenges now is how you bring people back into the office. And there's like I read consistently about, kind of creating the office as a destination, right? So making the office attractive, bringing people in. And, as I've sort of dove in to LoRaWAN's capabilities, there's an opportunity for LoRaWAN to help drive that, right? And, I work pretty closely with Cisco, and I know that Cisco supports LoRaWAN and within their IoT portfolio. But can you kind of talk to office as a destination, flexible workspaces, and how LoRaWAN can really shine there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the one thing the pandemic sort of heightened awareness on is needing to provide. So you've got a generation of workers in the workforce now who are very used to technology, very used to much more flexibility in the places they can work. Work from home, certainly. Starbucks tries to position itself as the third place, right, to work. So if you want to get people to come back in the office, as you said, you've got to offer kind of a different experience than they can get elsewhere. There's got to be a reason for them to endure a 30-minute, 45-minute, hour-long commute just to come to that office. And so companies are looking at way that they, this goes much beyond LoRaWAN, of course, but looking at ways in which they can use technology to do that. One of the biggest uses we've seen so far with LoRaWAN, because it's just an absolutely perfect fit for this, is in kind of flexible space workspaces. So hot desk booking, shared conference room booking, all those kind of things. And you tie that into some kind of an app that can allow you to reserve those spaces, show people what's available, what's not. People get familiar with what desks they like, one by the window, one away from the bathrooms, or whatever the preference is. And you can easily put a battery operated long life sensor under individual desks. It's cost effective to do that. You don't have to crawl under there once every few months and replace the batteries because of the attributes of LoRaWAN. Easily penetrates through concrete building, infrastructure and stuff like that. So it's a great fit for that. In addition to making it more attractive and easy for company or for employees to come into the office, now space managers are inherently getting all this data about how the space is being used, and can use that to reconfigure things, add more conference rooms, understand, if they've got the right size conference rooms, they need to split big ones in half and have two smaller ones. Do they have twice as many desks that get used on 95% of the time? Things like that is really, really invaluable data for managing the OpEx line in terms of their space reduction. So I think that's a great example of how it can really benefit the way flexible office space is now being configured.
Yeah, and the OpEx line is something that's variable, but it's also one of the largest, kind of expense lines for a particular business. And so providing insights through LoRaWAN can really help companies, to your point, right size that office space. Not only facilitate the flexibility of workspaces and reconfiguring things and that sort of thing, but really understanding, underutilization or overutilization of square footage. And lease space is quite expensive, right? And so I think that's super compelling. And there's a direct impact on the bottom line there, but great stuff. So yeah.
Absolutely. I was just going to mention that, one of the first applications of that was by Capgemini. And it was actually driven by their kind of facilities management team. And, they kind of liked the solution. They developed their own solution with partners and liked it so much that they, now offer it to their clients as part of a service. But I remember sitting with their kind of head of facilities and things like that. And he said, every year people come to me and say, I need more space. I need more space. And now I have I could never argue, we would just argue about whether they did or not. And he said, now I actually have numbers to prove whether or not they do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, data is data, right? So pretty powerful stuff. Well, let's move to our third and final topic. And I want to talk a little bit. I mentioned sustainability and how, I really see LoRaWAN, being very credible, sort of hanging its hat in the LoRa Alliance on sustainability. I've spent time at the World Expo in Paris last year. I was in Florida earlier this year, and we talked a lot about sustainability and the different use cases. But every company these days has a net zero goal, and it's either by 2030 or 2040, depending on the company. What can LoRaWAN do to help companies achieve this net zero goal? Because I think at times it can be sort of an esoteric, arithmetic, and you can buy credits and do these sort of things, but LoRaWAN can really have a demonstrable impact on helping companies get there. But would love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, boy, there is such you could spend an hour talking about this because there are so many ways. That's such a broad umbrella, I guess, of net zero goes. There's so many ways you can impact that as a company. So I'll kind of start big and narrow down a little bit. But
okay,
so even what we just talked about, understanding how your space is being utilized and being able to right size your space not only contributes to reduction in OpEx because you don't lease more space than you need, but it also contributes to not having a bunch of space being heated and cooled that's not being used. So just getting your space right sized is a great first step. You think of all the ways in which LoRa can aid in making supply chain more efficient. From tracking goods and services, how they're moving through your supply chain. That can contribute towards kind of net zero, your impact on the environment. Things like moving to usage-based cleaning schedules in a commercial space, for example, instead of time-based schedules. So most facility management companies come in and clean the bathrooms every 4 hours or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah. There's nobody, they haven't really even been used. But if you can, reduce the number of people making trips to that building unnecessarily, reduce the number of cleaning supplies that are being used, all of that stuff adds up. All of that's contributes to net zero. And then of course just being more efficient with the way energy is used. Being able to efficiently monitor sub-metering for electrical usage, power usage, understanding if a space is actually being used at a particular time and being able to adjust the heating and cooling. When a place is built, you don't have a thermostat everywhere, in every room. So they kind of just take an aggregate and an average of what's going to do it. But if you combine more data points of, whether or not a place needs to be cooled or heated, if somebody's even in it or not, with a more intelligent heating and air system with dampers and things like that, then you can really have an impact on energy efficiency. So there's a company, Nordic Crop in the Nordics, that has a use case, and they were able to contribute to 30% reduction in CO2 goals for a particular company through implementation of their smart building technology. And it's not only about the just sensors and collecting this data. You got to do something with it. You got to have some intelligence. And having all the cloud-based AI and machine learning coupled with this ability to gather much more extensive sensor data is a perfect marriage right now. So I think the final thought I'll give on that is many companies just need to take the leap and start measuring things, right? You can't improve something if you don't know what the current baseline is. So, a lot of times it's hard, you need an ROI for a project and that kind of stuff, but sometimes you just gotta know this is a corporate goal and we need to see where we are now, and we're setting a goal to improve it by 10%. And if we do that, we'll get a return on investment, and we need to just start measuring things to begin with. So that's kind of the first step in the journey a lot of times.
Yeah, I agree, and sometimes the journey is hard to start, right? And so, I would encourage anyone that's viewed this video on smart buildings with Byron and I to dig further. There are a lot of resources on the LoRa Alliance website. And Byron, I just want to thank you for your time. It's been a great conversation.
Oh yeah, likewise. Happy to talk about it. I think LoRaWAN's a great fit for smart buildings. It's a really wonderful tool in the toolbox.
I agree. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.